Let's bring in Dennis Richardson now. He's, of course, a former ASIO chief, former Secretary of Defence, former DFAT Foreign Affairs Secretary. Dennis Richardson, thank you for your time.
Pleasure, Ken.
How important is this first face-to-face meeting at a ministerial level, the first in upwards of 2 years with China?
Well, first of all, it occurred more, quicker than what I thought it would. That's a good thing. Secondly, I think it's notable that this is the first opportunity for Australian and Chinese ministers to meet, and they've taken that opportunity. So it's notable in that respect. However, I don't think we should get ahead of ourselves in terms of expectations. I think Richard Marles, the Defence Minister, has said it all when he said a change in tone, but our national interests remain the same. And I think that pretty much gets to the guts of it.
And when you point out that it's the first possible opportunity and they've seized it, while the Chinese Defence Minister is a senior figure, there are others more senior that would have authorised him saying, yes, I will meet with the Australians. So am I right to say this would have come from the top?
Oh, I think so. At the same time, you need to bear in mind that it's against the backdrop of continued differences over the South China Seas, against the backdrop of the recent Chinese venture into the South Pacific, directly targeting our own security interests. So it is positive, but it's against a particular background that should remind us of the real differences between ourselves and China.
And on that Pacific plan that China sought to get a region-wide security framework in place, that fell over. Is that a win, an early win for the Albanese government? And what's the message that effort sends in terms of what our priorities need to be for the foreseeable future?
Well, the first point to make is that the Chinese are playing a long game here. They want a security presence in the South China Seas, in the South Pacific, to complicate both US and Australian strategic defence planning. They will continue to strive for that over the next 10, 20 years. We have to succeed every time they come after that. They only have to succeed once. So it's clearly going to be a priority for the Australian government for the foreseeable future, regardless of who's in office.
And by that, do you mean we have to ensure strong, sustainable ties with every member of our neighbourhood in the Pacific so that we don't lose a weak link to Beijing?
Totally. Now, I think we have a very strong starting point. We have an infinitely deeper and broader set of relationships in the South Pacific than China. But China has a lot of money and China will use that money to its own advantage. But I think we can win out on that front, provided we play the right game.
Do you think that the new government simply, that the change of government has enabled this easing of the tensions to happen just because we're talking about a new face, a new series of faces, which is a little ironic, isn't it, given that in China we don't ever see a change of the ruling party, but it has been the catalyst for maybe an easing here?
Yeah, look, I think that's right, Kieran. Inevitably, when you've been in office a long time, you accumulate barnacles, you accumulate bruises, and a new government presents new opportunities. The easiest part of governing is really in the first few months. You have community goodwill, you have the opportunity to clear the decks, and I think the government has done that well up till now, but the real challenges are ahead.
And so with the dialogue, to explain to the viewers, I mean, the importance of it is not just to get the trade back and going, but it's also to say, to be able to communicate our concerns in a frank way, but find an equilibrium in which those concerns are able to be expressed with what apparently Richard Marles did do in that meeting.
Look, with the relationship is not going to return to what it was. When we think of a reset, we should not think in terms of going back to a relationship that existed between 1972 and 2012. The relationship has changed fundamentally. We have key differences. Any one of a number of things could come along to upset the apple cart. For instance, we could find out tomorrow that ASIO and or the AFP have taken action in respect of foreign interference in Australia, which concerns the Chinese. The Chinese could do something in the South China Seas, which we would find objectionable. They might do something in Hong Kong. So there are going to be challenges that are going to continue to come our way in that relationship. But what Richard Marles has done is set a new tone in the relationship and provided an opportunity to get some of that accumulated baggage which has been hanging around the relationship for the last couple of years.
What's your assessment of Prime Minister Albanese's start on foreign policy as well? He went straight to the quadrilateral security dialogue, which was almost a gift from his predecessor, because it's a good way to start as Prime Minister, reassuring himself and others that he's comfortable in that setting. And then to Indonesia, where he didn't just visit the capital, Jakarta, he went further afield.
I'd say two things. First of all, Mr Albanese will probably never have an easier overseas visit than to the Quad in Tokyo. Secondly, I would say that he's done everything absolutely right. His tenor and tone has been pitch perfect. What he said in Tokyo you could not fault. His visit to Indonesia wasn't just to Jakarta. It was outside of Jakarta, the first Australian Prime Minister to visit Sulawesi. That would have been noticed by the Indonesians. So while the first steps are always the easiest, you can also make mistakes, and Prime Minister Albanese has not yet made a single mistake in the foreign policy arena.
And finally, as a former Defence Secretary as well, the French rapprochement over the submarines included a deal of $830 million compensation to get that done. The Prime Minister apparently going to Paris next week, I think, or possibly slightly later the week after. So Macron keen to welcome him as well. So it shows that has smoothed over what was another problem.
Quite frankly, Kieran, I thought the payout would be more than $1 billion. I was surprised that it was less than $1 billion. So I think they've done a good job there, and it's good to get that off the table quickly. That's what a new government should do. Get rid of the barnacles, get rid of the baggage, and they're doing that.
Indeed, with an ally. You don't want barnacles.
Absolutely.
There.
And France is very important to us in the South Pacific and in terms of the South China Seas.
Got it. Dennis Richardson, great to get your insights. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, Kieran.